I listened to a little bit of the beginning from Gannon Stauch's mother, and she talks about Letecia being semi-normal. You know, they had communications, they cared for each other. She trusted Letecia, and she didn't think that Letecia would ever do anything to Gannon. So it's kind of interesting to hear how a seemingly normal person Letecia Stauch used to be. But I say seemingly because, you know, we did hear from Harley Hunt that Letecia was very manipulative. Letecia Stauch would make hints that she was going to kill herself or something or overdose on pills and like fuck with Harley's mind. And then she said that like, oh, this is our last dinner together. And Harley was like crying or something like that. And then all of a sudden the next day, like Letecia never talked about it ever again. Like, I don't know. That is some weird mindfuckery for your kids. It's crazy. I heard Letecia had to pick her up from the airport and didn't. And on the same day, she got rid of her son. Yes! Letecia was supposed to. So when her son went missing, Gannon's mom was trying to find out more information from Letecia, but Letecia was dodging, was acting weird. And then Gannon's mom was like, well, I'm flying in. So Gannon's mom flies in. Letecia was supposed to pick her up, and Letecia does not pick her up.
You really poured your heart out, and it seemed like you let out everything that you'd possibly been holding in for a long time when it came to the defendant sitting there. Can you talk about how you found the strength to sit there day in and day out in the trial with the defendant just a few feet away?
As you guys know.
Man, she probably wanted to strangle her. Just hop over that bench and just strangle the crap out of this woman.
It would, as anybody, not just a parent, we would have anger sitting there, especially with someone that is so emotionless.
Hi, Christine.
But Gannon was my reminder. He wouldn't want me to mess up his story. So I feel like I know he was there with me, and I had to get it out. Didn't feel like I needed to practice. I just needed to get it out. And I could have said some harmful things, and that would have taken away from who Gannon is. And so he allowed me to get through it.
Would it have made any difference if the judge had allowed you to address her directly, look at her directly?
Well, I wrote out the paper actually directly to her, and then Claudia, my victim's advocate.
Yeah, I was actually surprised that the judge says that don't say anything directly to her, say it directly to him. And I was like, oh, I feel like usually when I listen to impact statements, it's usually directed at the person who did it.
Lady who was wonderful, she told me, she said, you have to direct it to the judge. So as you probably heard, with my statement, I said you a lot, and then I had Tisha capitalized. And so there was a lot of portions where it was directed her in a way. But I had a lot of emotions, and it was very fluctuable in that time frame. I had anger. I wanted her to hear it. Didn't know if I'd ever have the opportunity to say those things, but at least she heard it. I don't care how she reacts. And I think that's how Gannon would have liked it to be portrayed as well.
You said she was emotionless.
Yes.
Throughout the entire thing. Were you wanting to see something from her?
It would have been nice, but I kind of prepared myself with help of the DA team and victims advocacy and we've all seen the stunts that she's done throughout this thing. So I kind of prepared my thinking for what could possibly happen, what could not possibly happen. And when I seen her within the first week, I felt like, and when Harley got up there, and it was the same way, that's what I knew it would be to the end. So
you mentioned in your victim impact statement that she had everyone fooled.
She did.
We're talking about her fooling everyone, so many people that were in her sphere. Is there anything, looking back now in retrospect, that you think that's what that was? Any red flag that you can think of now that you know everything that you know?
Yeah, a lot of people were wondering, were there any red flags? Did they know that Letecia was like kind of off her rockers?
When knowing Tisha for quite some time, like she was a friend to me in a sense. She taught with me. So that I couldn't say that there were red flags. There were times where I did not see her in the picture. Normally she was always someone that was always involved. And then there was like a short period where she wasn't. And I was a little concerned, but not to the effect that I ever imagined that any of this would ever have happened. I trusted her.
When you say not involved, you mean not involved with the kids or communicating with you the way she had?
She wasn't in the picture. It was like she wasn't there. And it went from me talking to her strictly about everything, flights, childcare, school, what their grades are, holidays. We would, if they had them, we would always like interchange, and it just stopped. And so I was a little concerned, but nothing to the impact of what actually happened ever. And I've always kind of looked back and wanted to see if there were signs, and I can't say that there were any. She was someone I trusted. Like I could, when I was in the hospital with my daughter, like we talked on the phone. And
were they fighting for custody over Gannon because I don't know which parent moved, but like did one parent move to like a different state or something, and that's why they were fighting for custody? He's doing his best, a little tiny corky legs and big butt won't let him. True.
It was, and we would even say we loved each other because we had to get past some things that had happened earlier in our lives, but it was nothing like this by no means. And Gannon never would have shown it anyways. Like he would always tell me I love everybody, and he would ask to talk to her, and I just don't understand the amount of love that someone could have individually, Gannon, myself, and I know Al, and then she took it for granted. So
Was there a certain point after you learned he was missing that, well, let me ask you about when you first heard he was missing. Did it cross your mind?
But I think they did have like a custody battle at some point, from my understanding. I don't know. I feel like someone like her is like Two-Faced. It's crazy. None of them say, oh, she's toxic. But I guess maybe her daughter Harley didn't know how to define what she felt with her mom. Yeah, they're going to show him what it's like to be expelled and get hit on the head.
It could have been Letecia.
Oh, yeah. Right at the first. I received a phone call from Tisha saying that something about Gannon had accidents, and I'm going to fix this. Gannon did not have accidents anymore. He outgrew that. He was on medicines that caused constipation, and he was supposed to take medicines to fix that. And so I just don't understand the misconception of that whole thing.
It sounds like you said that initially when you heard that he was missing that you suspected Letecia.
Yes, because she acted funny. Because I hadn't talked to her. Like that was a time period that she wasn't in the picture, and I hadn't talked to her. And so she called me on Gannon's phone. And through the court process, I was the only one that she called on Gannon's phone. And that really hurts because I knew it was another jab. And I begged her to look for my child on the phone call. I talked to her every 2 hours, and it was just weird. So about a candle, I looked for Gannon, and then she was supposed to pick me up from the airport, her and Harley. We were supposed to do this together. And just the things that just didn't make sense, I was a little off on maybe she had something to do with this, but not to the extent of taking his life. I thought that maybe she had done something to get somebody's attention, to be a hero at the end, but not to take Gannon.
Tell me about what you do to keep Gannon's memory alive, especially for his siblings.
Pictures and videos. So I encourage anybody that has a family member, always capture every moment. I do think my daughter, she's 4, she was 18 months when all of this happened, and she talks about Gannon all the time. And had I not had videos and memories of his voice and just not still videos, she would just have to rely on others. And
yeah, that's really weird. I actually didn't know that she used Gannon's phone. It's so weird. The accident with his stomach was meant to humiliate him. In Letecia's kites, she claimed that she had IBS and had it crap for 15 days. She was using Gannon's real problems. I hope for sure that she really was constipated for that many days.
I have one of our neighborhood representatives in Lorson Ranch. They got us a Build-A-Bear, and it had Gannon's voice in it as well. And so before Nova and Lena, when I have her, they press the button, and he says, I love you so much. So I do that, and then I have a tattoo on my arm of him. Some days I can talk about him, some days I can't, because there is a story with Gannon, his smile, his faithfulness, and just being able to talk about him has changed my life. So I can only imagine what it can do to others, and if it can change one person's perspective of how they think or how they would love their loved ones, it's worth it all to me. So with my journey, you would just have to make sure that you have an open communication and just being involved and just trying to pay attention to every sign. And as I look back, you try to look for signs. But people that are going through custody battles, you have to keep your child in mind. Sometimes we have human reactions. We all get angry when we have children involved or just one child. But what I would do is just make sure that you keep your child involved.
Very, very true.
And then if you can have open communication with the other partner, it's much easier. Because if your best interest is for your children, she's going to thrive, they are going to thrive, your children are going to.
The weirdest things that I hear that parents do is when they use their kids to attack the other parent. That, and then also telling your kid everything about how horrible the other parent is. I think that's so weird. Like basically just trash talking the other parent to your kid.
Going to thrive, and just make sure
especially
you have
when they're young.
Communication not only with that spouse or significant other, but with your children. And to me, to have my daughter to come tell me, I'm having a great day, or something happened, or she feels like she's being bullied, which that's only happened once, and it was very minor. She can come tell us, and it was just she wanted everybody to be her friend, and one person she didn't think was her friend, so she considered it bullying. But her coming to me, it meant a lot, and she does the same thing for her father, and just having faith as well, and just never stop. Your children are worth fighting for. So I guess I would leave it as that. To me, they're a gift from God. You can learn from.
Yeah, that's why I'm pretty sure 15 days. I'm pretty sure she's definitely exaggerating. Yeah, 15 days of like being clogged and not shitting.
Your children, as much as your children can learn from you.
One real quick question. Is there anything that Letecia could share, information that you want about Gannon, that you think she hasn't shared yet?
I don't really want her to share the process. I think we all know, based upon the timeline, that I think Kevin, I can't remember his last name, Kevin, he made, I think we're very clear of what happened. I think what's left for her to say is, I'm sorry. She doesn't know it to me. She owes it to Gannon. And if she does that, we can start a healing process or forgiveness process. And that's all I want her to do is just say, I'm sorry. And that's for the world, because there's so many people that are.
I don't think she's ever going to say she's sorry, because she had her chance. I don't think she's ever going to say she's sorry.
Invested their time, their life, their family. That's a simple gesture, 3 words. That's all.
I just mentioned the community here in Colorado Springs, Al. I mean, it's amazing the way that we've seen them come out and support you all as a family. Are there any stories over the past 3.5 years that
This is the father, by the way.
surprise us about how people have shown their support? I know I talked to a woman from Rhode Island who flew in just for the trial, just to support you all. They've had posters and flowers. Anything you can share?
I think based on what the world knows, I don't think there's anything that would surprise the world about this community. From day one, it was a community effort. From the very moment that he was reported missing, as we know now, that wasn't the truth, but in that moment, you saw what the community is capable of. And I have said all along that the thoughts and prayers of those in this community and across the country, and I've even found out around the world, those have sustained us and those have got us through. I don't know, especially in the early days, I don't know where we would have been without the true support of the community. So, and I've said all along that truly was a sustaining factor for me and then in turn for Lena. I don't want to speak for Lena, but I would assume for her as well, to help us get through those early days. People opening their house, food being delivered, just what you think. So often we hear so many stories of how people are divided through this. This community has been unified, especially our neighborhood. It really started there. I spoke in church one time about driving down one of the main roads adjacent to our neighborhood.
The Fountain?
Well, yeah, so there's Mark Scheffel, but I think it was Powers I was on, which is the next road up, the next main road up. And I happened to be on a hill and I could see my neighborhood. I'd already moved out, but it was like just
Definitely. Al probably feels so guilty. I feel for him.
a blue glow from all the people that had changed their front porch
Yeah, because out of anyone else, he probably blamed himself the most.
lights to the blue lights or whatever. And it just was a signal of a lifeline, a signal of support from the community. And I can't say it enough. Those early days, that's what got us through. Because I don't know if you're a parent, but all the parents that I've come in contact with, they're always so heartfelt and saying, like, I can't imagine what you're going through.
Ray, don't be summoning the devil, okay? We don't need any more demons here. We're dealing with Lauren. We're dealing with Chad soon. Just dealt with Letecia. We don't need another demon here. Let the demon stay Spain. Hi, Morgan. How are you doing today?
Looking back, I can't understand how we made it through, but for the support of the community and, of course, God sustaining us as well. So,
Talking about those early days, those phone calls, I know you said we didn't even listen to the half of it in court, but hearing you, keeping your composure and talking to her before she was arrested, before she knew that she was under suspicion, but you're still having to tell her she's a good mom. You're still having to say those things to her to try and get as much information. I think all of us were shocked that you were able to get through those calls. Can you take us behind the scenes? What was it like when you hit the mute button? If you were talking to the FBI, what were you using to keep going with those conversations?
So, and I don't want to get too much into the weeds, but there have been other situations of far less gravity than, of course, losing Gannon. There have been other situations throughout our relationship where I had to, do a similar thing where, hey, something might have happened, something fairly inconsequential, but, had to get to the bottom of something. And I think she referenced that as one of those phone calls is like, you're always playing FBI agent or something, not knowing I was actually sitting there with the FBI, of course. But so, yeah, kind of, as I testified to, kind of staying in character of FBI agent or however you want to look at it. Yeah, it was tough. It was tough not to lose my cool. I did say a few things I'm not proud of in those moments. And I asked for forgiveness, to people that had to hear it. They're like giving me the grace considering the circumstance. But it is a little humbling to hear some of the things I said in the moment. But considering what was going on, I am thankful that I was able to keep my cool.
Wait, that was Dr. Lewis, wasn't it? But they had their kites rolls, their eyes, and think she can wait. Wait, what about Dr. Lewis? Why are we talking about Dr. Lewis now? We didn't hear half the calls. The calls were so excruciatingly, painfully long. And there were more blue face, white face, blue face, white eyes, blue face, white eyes. Because I feel like it was there was kernels of truth of what we found out later. Some things that she mentioned in those phone calls that turned out to be good hard evidence. So when I speak about people questioning me, I might not have been out there arm in arm with some of the people searching through the fields and stuff like that. I did a little bit of that, but my role, as I said in my statement, was trying to get into her mind and just any part I could help and get knowledge of really where Gannon was. That's all that mattered. At that point, we just wanted to find him, and that was my goal. And that helped me as well, focusing on that Gannon was the focus of it.
When it was weeks later, did you still have hope that you would still find him alive? And what were some of the scenarios, knowing that you hadn't seen him? Letecia seemed to not be sharing any good information at the time. Did you have scenarios about what you hoped was the reality?
So, draw on a few different specific things that happened. And I don't want to answer a question with a question, but I think the world heard the judge say, and I already answered another question with this, one of the very first phone calls, I was asked, I think it came through in a text from Tisha about they're asking for his dental records. So that was like day 0 or day 1, however you want to phrase it, that they're already asking for some way to identify him. So yes, I kept hope until the moment I was notified that they found his body and his remains in Florida. I kept hope alive. But also then that moment when they asked to bring the toothbrush and a shoe or article of clothing, whatever it happened to be, I don't remember, but I remember the toothbrush specifically. That was monumental. And I don't think we got to hear this in the trial, but the reason I took the toothbrush down was because that capital F again. I'm the dad, I'm the father, I'm going to go down and take this down. I think they asked her to actually take it down, and I took it from her or asked her to give it to me. Nothing confrontational, was that I'm going to take this down because I want to be at the front of whatever's going on to find this little boy. And then I talk about hope. I asked his mom, she was going to the store that day or the next day. I said, hey, why don't you go buy another toothbrush so that when Gannon comes home, he has a toothbrush.
Oh.
It's a little bit behind the scenes, but yeah, that is, I think I had a feeling the entire time, but there was always that hope. You never lose hope, right?
Absolutely. Was there ever a moment where you hoped that she was telling the truth, or felt like she actually was telling the truth? Because it seemed that she was off top a suspect, that there wasn't really anyone else that was being looked for other than the names that she was throwing out there. But if I can back it up just a bit, because I know you mentioned that you've had to have those phone calls with her on other non-consequential things. Were there any red flags with her that you see now, looking back at your life with her as your wife?
So I'm going to say, so you asked two questions, and I'm not trying to go back to court here, but first one was about when I first knew and talk about being a suspect. So the suspect part, I'm going to leave that to the authorities. That's their lane. I think I was pretty clear in both my testimony and my statement that when I went to look for that Volkswagen Tiguan at the school where she told me it was, that was really the point in time when it shifted for me, wholeheartedly shifted. And then from there, I think you know the rest of the story, but that's really when it shifted for me. I already answered the red flag question too in a different way, but I go, I won't say moment by moment, but each and every day, I don't leave things undone. I don't leave stones unturned. And if I can't get to it today, then I'm going to get to it tomorrow. And some people confuse that for me being a little bit too type A sometimes. But as you talk about red flags, I don't have any regrets about that relationship. I think I was clear that relationship also was coming to an end. And you can take that for whatever it means. But nothing that ever happened in that relationship or my relationship with Gannon's mom equals a dead child. So people, and I understand people like to do that, ask about red flags. I'm not dogging you. That's a great question. But I'm not going to rip myself apart because somebody murdered my child. Nothing that happened in my entire life equals that little boy getting that treatment. So
absolutely. And in no way would that have put any blame on you, and didn't intend that with that question, because I think it's natural for people to want to figure out why when something this devastating happens. Sure. I know that must be a question.
Yeah, it's probably because he got that question so many times. Red flags, red flags. Oh, it's your fault. You didn't pick up the red flags, so.
Question for you all as well. I want to ask you a question that we also get from people who are watching this about trust. Because we did speak to Landon earlier today, and she said it'd be very difficult for her to ever trust someone again. And we saw you and your beautiful wife there giving those victim impact statements yesterday, and it's so wonderful to see that you all have this new family unit. You told Letecia that you weren't the glue. Can you talk about?
I hope the new girlfriend, I hope she a good woman. Oh my God. I hope she's a good woman, good wife, good mother to their daughter. Oh, I hope she's a good person.
For those who may be going through something similar, or they watch this and their trust is diminished a bit, how did you build that trust up again if you felt like you lost it in people?
I think we put the blame when the blame's due. First of all, I think the trust was ripped away by a specific person.
Mm-hmm. True. I think with victims, it's sadly common to get blamed for not being careful. Here's the thing. I think there's no point in trying to blame the victims unless we have evidence that they were being negligent too, that they were ignoring the signs, that they didn't give a shit that, their kid was being mistreated by a step parent. If we have evidence and stuff like that, then yeah, let's go for it. Let's rip them to shreds. But if we don't, it's like, well, why place blame on someone if we're not even sure, right? You're just thinking worst case scenario.
So for me to take that out on the rest of the world is unjust and unfair, first of all. Second of all, I chance to share a little bit of our story. I met my wife through tragedy in both of our lives. So when you talk about trust from...
Yeah, I heard that she lost... did she lose a kid too? What happened with her?
What other way could I trust a person? And I had those same questions. How can I ever get into a long-term serious relationship again? Would I be able to? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. Then along comes my way someone who's also lost a child in a tragic fashion. So I think that answers the question for itself. That
what happened to her?
And I understand the level of trust and the level of difficulty it would be to develop a new relationship considering what we've been through. And I just will sum it up with our motto, which is through tragedy we will triumph, and we are. Every single day. She brings joy into my life, and we are winning.
You showed a picture during your victim impact statements of Gannon holding the sign that said, I think I am a future soldier. What were some of the traits and characteristics that you saw in him already at 11 that you know would have been in him as an adult?
Oh, I think he just had a heart for people. And one theme, and I've carried that into my family now, but kindness. Just love and kindness is something that I tried to instill from into Gannon and Lena at a very early age. And most of that was directed toward one another. I basically mandated that they be together coming home from the school bus or whatever situation, but just so that they'd understand the importance of people. I think the carpet incident is a great example of how I knew that was just, lack of a better word, a bunch of crap. Because my children knew that people are the most important thing to me. We can get new carpet, we can get new games, we can get new houses. We can't get new people. And that's something I said to them often, and I say it still to my family today. The way we treat one another is what defines us. And that was a defining characteristic of Gannon. And I don't think he would have changed much. Yeah, he would have gone through his teenage and junior high years that, we talked about, that everybody goes through that, but his demeanor was just of love and kindness. And I think coming from a father, you'd expect that, but I think you've heard enough from the rest of the world that knew him to corroborate what I'm saying. So
I loved how you talked about the changes in what he called you and how that does change as we get older, and it would have come full circle again.
Lena got her head beat into a wall, told Al. Oh, when was that brought up? Al believed Letecia. An ambush cannot be avoided. Victims are most really often victimized. I believe only have heard about her losing a child, so they related to each other. Yeah, because I don't know. He said similar thing happened. So it was like, was her kid also murdered by a significant other?
One of my last questions has to do with something you also said in your victim impact statements about what you don't know and what the defendant has never shared, and that's your son's last words. Can you talk about that, and also what else, if anything, you wish she would share, even though I understand you want to be as far disconnected from her as possible?
So I think through life experiences, and I think a lot of us can understand this,
his new wife's name is Melissa. I don't know what the last name is.
Accepted the fact that there's some things I may never know, and she may never share, such as the truth, such as what she actually did. I think the judge spoke about the possible order of events. Anyone connected to this case directly, I would assume, and I know I have, played that in my mind, how it happened, what happened, his last breath, his final words. I think it's safe to assume I may never get that information. So once again, back to the poem I referenced, that I am the captain of my soul. Do I let that poison my soul that I'll never know what my son's last words were, or how he took his last breath, or those things? No. I would not be the man I claim to be if I let that ruin me. Do I want to know? Absolutely. Does it weigh me down? I think it comes in waves.
Yeah, what did you hear that from? I don't know. I'm trying to Google it right now. I don't see anything. Was it like in one of the testimonies?
But I won't let it control me and overtake me. I expect to never talk to her again. I expect to never get those answers, whether she gives it to me or anyone. I think her demeanor kind of shows that she's not really remorseful, as the judge said. So, yeah, I think that's where I'm at with it, and that's where we're going to be.
The last one has to do with what may come next. You've mentioned it, that you don't really want to have anything to do with her, and we understand from her attorney she plans to appeal. Is that something you won't be paying attention to at all, or showing up for if it does go to court again?
She's planning to appeal. Oh, man. The lawyer's like, oh, my God, get us off this case. We're done. They got to do their jobs.
I think we'll cross that bridge when we get there. This was enough for me, just from the emotions and the weight of it, but also for the result. She has every right to appeal and every right to do how she sees fit moving forward. But the judge said the mountain of evidence is equal to Mount Everest, and I think that, for me, is what I needed to hear. I knew that, but to hear the judge say it and the jury's decision, I think I'm at peace with where we're at. So I may or may not. I don't know. Like I said, cross our bridge when we get.
Yeah, I'm Googling around. I haven't found anything with Letecia Stauch beating Lena into the wall or anything like that. I don't see that anywhere. You sure it's true? I don't see anything here. I felt like that would have made huge news if she was also abusing the other kid.
Can I get you to say whatever you'd like about Judge Werner? Because I know you keep referencing his statements there at the end. Anything you want to say just about him as a officiant over this process?
I am overly pleased with his fairness. As often I tried to be as objective as possible and kind of take myself out of the emotions of it. And if there was an objection from one side or the other, I tried to reason through it, with objectivity, of course. And I think he did about as fair a job as a judge could do. Never been through this, so I have nothing to compare it to, but I'm very pleased because if you followed the case, there was objections and different arguments on both sides, and it never seemed that he was partial one way or the other from my perspective. So I'm very happy with it.
Judge Greg Werner, he did a good job. Murdered minister trial verdict. Who is this? What else is going on in the true crime land? True crime land. Oh, one that's happening right now. It's like the OnlyFans stalker. Oh God.